This is the lecture number 20 on this finite volume series, and what we are discussing is that the properties of linear system like the metric system. So, we have discussed so far the basic properties of the matrix, then we looked at the norm and then the error. So, while doing the error, we have stopped in the last lecture by calculating the forward and backward error. So, now if we move ahead and see that we lastly took an example of 2 by 2 system, and that was a matrix. This is where we actually stopped, but before moving ahead, just I would like to recall what has been discussed. So, two systems A, B, C 0, D, E, F 0, then you consider the floating point calculation of A dot B and you get the another 2 by 2 system like this. And since this all the epsilons which are considered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all these epsilons are a small numbers. So, you recast this particular system in, or rather split into two different matrices A, B into 1 plus epsilon into 1 plus epsilon 4. So, essentially what you are taking is that you take from the first component you split A and D into this. So, this is how it goes. Second component you take B 1 plus epsilon into epsilon 4, this one comes here. The other component like E 1 plus epsilon to epsilon 4 comes here, then 0 remains here, then the first matrix written C 1 plus F 5 and the last one is F. So, in a compact notation, if you write, it is a floating point calculation of A dot B is A plus epsilon A or E A E B. These are essentially the representation of the errors. So, the backward errors rather, and which satisfy the condition the magnitude of E A less than equals to this smaller number, and this is the order, magnitude of E B is this number less than equals to, with this is the order. So, this is where we stopped with the forward and backward error calculation. Now, we will try to see when. So, slowly one having said all this information about norms, errors and all these things, we are slowly moving towards the system which allows us to get a solution for a linear system through different approach. So, for example, when we will be talking about this linear approaches or the linear system solver for this matrix, whether it is a direct or iterative approaches. So, one of the approach would be the Gauss elimination process. When you try to find out the solution for F I equals to B, one very common approach is to get the Gauss elimination, and while solving through Gauss elimination like A x equals to B, we see that bound on the error norm would be like this A x plus computed plus E x. So, this would be bounded for this calculation. So, this is quite harder to find than the bounds on E A, E B, such that this holds exactly this particular property A plus E A, which is the backward error, into x computed B plus epsilon B. So, one please note here that in many instances the backward errors which are shown here, backward errors are more meaningful than forward errors. If initial data is accurate to certain digit or let us say 4 5 digits for example, then the algorithm for computing x needs not have 10 digits of accuracy. A backward error of order 10 to the power minus 4 could be acceptable. So, this is a very important note one needs to keep in mind. Now, these are something which one can show. So, some more additional notes for floating point arithmetic. So, the some additional notes, what it says that for the floating point arithmetic is that in most of the computing system, these are the real numbers which are actually represented in two parts. One, so this is where slowly we are moving towards the handshaking between our hardware precision or the machine precision with our calculation. So, any real numbers are represented in two parts, one called mantissa and the other called exponent. So, if the representation is in the base beta, then x is written as plus minus dot d1 d2 d3 dm small meter to the power beta, where this dot product of or after decibel d1 d2 d3 dm is a fraction in the base b representation. This would be, you can be able to appreciate this once we move ahead and see some example how you represent this mantissa and exponent component. Now, epsilon is an integer which could be positive, negative or 0. So, epsilon here could be anything plus, minus or 0, it can be anything. So, another thing is that the form is normalized in that where d1 is not 0. So, as I said, we will pick some example to look at the previous calculation or the previous expression of mantissa and exponent for floating point arithmetic. Now, this is in terms of base 10, the number is 1000.12345, which can be written as point or 0.100012345 base 10 to the power 10 to the power 4. Okay. Now, similarly 0.000812345 can be written as 0.812345 base 10 to the power minus 3. Okay. So, it is just this is, I mean, again those who are, I mean, any school going kid also know that these are two numbers and one can write these things, but what is important here, we are trying to correlate these things which are somehow taught in at the school level arithmetic calculations, how much that becomes important when you actually do this large scale programming and numerical algorithm to be converted to the set of instruction for computers. So, this becomes important from the computing point of view. Now, problem lies here with the floating point arithmetic, and that is where we have to live with limited precision. And what does that mean? It means, it take an example again, assume that we have only 5 digits of accuracy in the mantissa and 2 digits for the exponent. So, excluding the sign. Okay. So, now if you look at that, the 5 digit of accuracy, so after decibel you go D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, this actually is these 5 digits, and then 2 digits for the exponent, you go E1, E2. Now, let us try to add 1000.2 to 1.07. So, arithmetically one can do very easily like that. This is 1000.2, 1.07, this should give me 1001.27. Now, if you represent them through this kind of mantissa and exponent representation, 1000.2 or equals to 0.1000204 and 1.07 is 0.107000001. So, as we said, these are 5 digit which corresponds to D1, D2, D3, D4, D5 and these are E1 and E2, these are exponents. Similarly, here D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, epsilon 1 or E2. So, what is the initial task? You align the decimal points. The one with smallest exponent will be rewritten, so its exponent matches the largest one. This statement is very crucial here. The one with smallest exponent will be rewritten so that its exponent matches the largest one. So, we have to write 1.07 in such a fashion 0.000107 into 10 to the power 4. Now, second task is that we add the mantissas. So, mantissa was for this case it was 0.000107, other case 0.010002, and while doing this what we have taken that the exponent part has been constant. So, this number also the exponent would be the 10 to the power 4, here the multiplication. Now, once we rewrite that number, then now it is a multiplication of 10 to the power 4. Once you add these mantissas, you get 0.1000127. So, you find out the result, and result has 6 digits and can use only 5. So, we can chop the results. So, what you have got? You got D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D6. So, the digits in mantissa are 6 digits. Now, our precision as per the problem description, we have 5 digits of accuracy in the mantissa. So, what it will happen, even after the addition you will get a chopped results up to 5 digits. So, D3, D4, D5, and where it is getting rounded up, it is rounded up 0.10013, again rounded up to 5 digit, because that is the accuracy that you have. And if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth one is rounded off because the last 6 digit is greater than 5. So, it is rounded up to this. So, this is the rounded result. So, what you can do now, you can normalize the result if it is required, but particularly for this example you do not need to normalize anything. So, with rounding you can write, these are my 5 digit accuracy mantissa D4, D5, and these are E1, E2. So, this would be the final results, and if you do that you have already rounded off. So, one can carry out similar exercise with this kind of numbers, but this what happens when you rounding of the numbers at the machine level, because machine understands this kind of digits or the bits. Now, when we say that the machine precision, now we bring back certain information from the computing hardware point of view. What is the standard IEEE norms? So, if you have 32-bit precision, which is pretty much today not available in most of the desktop kind of computers, because everything is more or less 64-bit system, which is a single precision system. Some laptops they are available with 32-bit precision, but preliminary now the hardware has been gone to that extent where you can get 64-bit precision or the high end precision. But what happens if you have a 32-bit precision or single precision system? So, this is the sign of the number. 23 bits are actually allocated to the mantissa and 8 bits are allocated to the exponent, 1 bit is allocated for the sign. So, this is how the distribution actually takes place. So, if you just think about as an engineer what you are doing, you are sending some comments to the computer. You are saying that okay, hey, you do this, but computer does not understand that thing. So, that is what you write program. So, through program actually you send that instruction to the computer. Now, once you send that instruction to the computer, every program could be written in some programming language, which includes the oldest one is the Fortran, then C, C++, Java, Python, anything, these are all called programming language. And programming language has some sort of an handshaking between the hardware. So, your programming language has some sort of an requires some compilers, and compilers actually has some handshaking with the hardware. So, what it does, your programming language transform your set of instructions. So, you are actually working at this level where you have taken a PDE, you have converted your PDE to the basically you converted your PDE to a set of discretized equation, then you got a linear system, then you know how to solve the linear system, then you devise some set of a series of instruction through programming language, you feed that series of instruction to the computer. Computer literally does not understand that, it only understands bits. So, those programming language has to be transformed of the machine understanding language. So, that is where your compiler actually play the mediating role, and it actually transform your set of instruction which is written through the programming language and make it understandable for hardware. It is just like you may not understand this language of the machine hardware, similarly machine hardware or the computer does not understand. When we talk about computer, it is not the everything, it is essentially we are talking about preprocessor or the processor of the computer which understands only those machine language. So, your computer, a compiler actually transform things in the understandable from the hardware, and the hardware understands this kind of precision level things, and where you actually carry on your arithmetic operation and feed everything back. So, the error you have committed at this location, this will have an top up cascading effect at the end solution of your X, and that is why we have been doing so much of discussion on this. So, let us come back to that single precision. So, 1 bit assigned for the sign of that digit, 23 bits allocated for mantissa, 8 bits allocated for exponent. So, this is in binary, the leading one in mantissa does not need to be represented, 1 bit gained. So, that is a hidden bit. So, largest exponent could be 2 to the power 7 minus 1, 127, and smallest one is minus 126. So, this is the bias which, now when you go to the 64 bit precision or rather double precision system, 1 bit again assigned for the sign, 52 bits assigned for mantissa, 11 bits for exponent. So, the bias is 1023. So, if C needs to be stored, the exponent, actual exponent is 2 to the power C minus 1023. So, which in a mathematical term E plus bias is 2047, that is a use. So, the largest exponent which is possible is 1023, smallest is minus 1022, and there is one hidden bit. So, mantissa has 53 bits represented. So, this is how your machine understands all these informations in that way. So, we can again take an example and then look at these things. So, you take number 1.0 and see what will happen if you add half, 1 by 4 and to the power minus I. Do not forget the hidden bit to be accounted for. So, this is the point. Now, hidden bit, this is the hidden bit, these are mantissa, these are exponent. Okay. So, that is how you define. So, the conclusion here is that floating point of 1 plus 2 to the power minus 52 not equals to 1, but floating point 1 plus 2 to the power minus 53 should be equals to 1. That is the message. So, if you make plus minus these mistakes here, that is going to hit you back. Now, we can move ahead with our discussion in some sort of an error and sensitivity analysis for the linear system. So, upon discussing of all these properties, norm, then precision or rather rounding up error, where it comes from, and the machine level precision, then we look at the sensitivity analysis and error analysis. And what you would like to look at is the conditioning of the first linear system, then estimating errors for solution of the linear system. So, though this is going to be a detailed discussion when we look at different kind of solvers and try to find out the solution for the linear system, but here we would like to touch upon the error related analysis for those linear system and then some other error analysis. So, you have a linear system like this, Ax equals to b. So, we do some sort of an perturbation analysis for this linear system, and how would one do that? You determine the variation of the solution x when the data undergoes small variations. So, the problem is ill conditioned if small variation in data cause very large variation in the solution. So, this is what leads to the perturbation analysis of this system. So, let us say E be an n by n matrix and small e be an n vector. So, you perturb A into small epsilon. So, this would be equals to A plus epsilon E and B into B plus epsilon E. So, I am perturbing my A x equals to B to A plus epsilon E x B plus epsilon E. This is the perturbed system that we are looking at, and obviously this is going to be non-singular for small enough epsilon. So, epsilon is a very small number, for that this would be. Now, solution of x epsilon of the perturbed system is such that you get this system which I have written here, essentially A epsilon E into x equals to, and this solution what you get, this you get for the perturbation of amount epsilon. So, that is the solution for epsilon. So, now you assume the difference. So, delta here actually represents the difference in the solution. So, one you get a perturbed solution and the actual solution. So, that is the difference which is represented to delta epsilon. Then one can write A plus epsilon E into delta epsilon equals to B plus epsilon E minus A plus epsilon E x. So, which will be rearranged as epsilon into small e minus E x. So, that is what one can write, and here delta epsilon is epsilon A plus epsilon E inverse into E minus epsilon E x. So, this is where you get from. So, you got an system, and from here A plus epsilon E into delta equals to epsilon into E minus E x. So, you get an delta equals to epsilon into A plus epsilon E to the power inverse multiplied with E minus E x. So, that is what you get. So, what you find out next is that the x epsilon is differentiable and its derivative is going to be x prime 0 with the limit epsilon tends to 0, then this delta epsilon by epsilon is like that. So, whatever delta you have obtained here, now in the limiting sense, when epsilon tends to 0, this guy should get me back A multiplied with E minus E x. So, a small variation will cause the solution to vary roughly epsilon into x prime 0, which is nothing but epsilon A inverse E minus x. So, that is what it does, and one can estimate by a small perturbation to the system how much your final solution will vary. So, the relative variation must be such that x epsilon minus x, the magnitude of that divided by x magnitude of the original solution. So, that is the relative variation must be less than equals to epsilon and the magnitude of A inverse, then the normalized E by x and A, E magnitude of E. So, that is a order of. So, it just come from this particular expression finding the relative variation, and one condition which satisfies here is that small b, the magnitude of the b is less than equals to mod A and mod x, or the norm of that. So, I can rewrite this particular expression, the relative variation is less than equals to epsilon A inverse E by B, E by A, order of epsilon square. So, you can see once you perturb the initial variation by epsilon, how much solution will vary, and you can find out the relative variation through this. So, these are going to be important when you actually use the iterative methods to find out the error, because the error needs to be decreasing when you go ahead with the iterative process. Now, there is a quantity which you have come across is called the condition number. It is kappa A, it is essentially represented at kappa A is the condition number of a matrix A, is the magnitude or norm of A into A inverse. So, of a linear system with respect to norm this. So, when you use the standard norms P norms 1, 2, 3 to infinity, we say this kappa A with the same level as P condition number for the pth norm of A can be written as magnitude of A at the pth norm and A inverse at the pth level. So, this P could, it is a pth level. So, P can go from 1 to n like that. Now, one can note here the kappa 2 is the ratio of the largest to a smallest singular values of A. So, it allows to define when A is not square. So, this is a very important note. When A is not a square matrix, you can actually define the condition number, and as you see, this is the ratio of the largest to the smallest singular values of A. So, which tells you depending on the condition number the sensitivity of this matrix for the linear solution, because that is what is getting associated with the condition number. So, from the condition number also one can anticipate the convergence level of your linear system. So, when you say the determinant is not good, a good indication of sensitivity. Small eigenvalues do not always give a good indication of poor conditioning. So, that is the point. Once you find out the eigenvalues, from there if you try to anticipate whether the conditioning is good or bad, that is not a good indication, but the determinant can be a good indication for getting the condition number. One can again take an example, simple example, and try to see what it means. You take an large alpha for n by n matrix such that A equals to I plus alpha into epsilon 1 and epsilon 1 n transpose. So, the inverse of A, if you find out, it will remain I minus alpha E 1 e to the power transpose n. For the infinity norm, we have A infinity norm equals to A inverse infinity norm equals to 1 plus mod alpha. So, that is what you get. So, this leads to the calculation of the condition number at the k infinity level, which is 1 plus mod alpha and completely square of that. So, that means it can provide you back a very large condition number for large value of alpha, but all the eigenvalues of A n are equal to 1. So, this is the check that what we made a statement here, the eigenvalues are not the good indicator for condition number, but once you look at here, the eigenvalues are nicely behaving, but the condition number is absolutely large for large alpha. So, that is not a good marker for condition number. So, now if you look at more detailed error bound, so one needs to see what happens to A plus E when it is non-singular, if A is non-singular and E is small. So, we can take a simple case as a lemma, the magnitude or the mod of E less than 1, then I minus E is non-singular, and it satisfied the norm 1 minus E inverse, the magnitude of that less than equals to 1 by 1 minus E bound. So, this can be proved based on this kind of theorems. So, you have first you can show if mod E less than 1, then E is non-singular, and second step you show I minus E and expand this to the kth level, which is identity matrix minus e to the power k 1. Then you can from there combining these two you obtain this. So, one can actually get, and then once you obtain this, take the limit at k tends to 0, we get 1 minus E inverse, which is I to the power 0 infinity, the smallest value. So, the lemma says identity minus E inverse mod should be less than equals to 1 by E. First we showed that E is small, so magnitude of that less than 1, 1 minus E is not singular, that is the first part. Second part we show that 1 minus E to the power inverse. So, basically you have expanded this term and you get 1 I minus E to the power k plus 1, and when you take the limit, this becomes the sum of E to the power I, and the final step, the magnitude of that equals to limit k tends to infinity I 0 to k E I, and the limiting sense of k tends to infinity one can write I 0 to k e to the power chi, then which is less than equals to k tends to infinity I 0 to k magnitude of E less than equals to E mod to the power I, which is nothing but 1 by 1 minus E. So, it proved the lemma. So, that is a sort of a very strong error bound in terms of computation. So, the thing is that if we can generalize that lemma, if A is non-singular and A inverse magnitude of A inverse and norm of E less than 1, then A plus E is also non-singular, and that satisfied this. So, this one can also prove based on the previous one. So, this can be similarly proved like that. So, the theorem says assume A plus E y equals to B plus epsilon and A x equals to B, and that norm of A inverse or magnitude of E less than 1, then A plus E is non-singular, and it also satisfied magnitude of x minus y divided by x. So, this is the normalization, then you get magnitude of A inverse magnitude of A by 1 minus A inverse E by A epsilon by B. So, how you prove that? So, you consider A plus E y equals to B plus epsilon and A x equals to B. So, what we get when you write A plus E y minus x equals to E minus E x, hence y minus x equals to A plus E inverse E minus E x. So, that is what you get for this. Now, taking the norm y minus x, the norm of that must be less than the inequality says A plus E inverse, the norm of that, and norm of E, norm of E, norm of x. Now, you divide that by the norm of x, so the inequality stands and the complete one is divided by x, and if you do the real algebra you can prove that this happens. Now, one can do some sort of an simplification to this kind of system. One immediate simplification is that you say E is 0. So, then norm of x minus y divided by norm of x less than equals to this. So, it boils down to another inequality which is a. So, from the generic case you can always simplify for the special cases, and simplification when capital E is 0, its norm of x minus y by norm x less than A inverse A E by B. So, that is another simplification which you can do. Now, if you write in certain or slightly weaker form, and assuming that norm of E by norm of A less than equals to delta and norm of epsilon by B or E by B less than delta, then I can write norm of x minus y divided by norm of x less than 2 delta condition number A by 1 minus delta condition number A. So, it can be also written in another form which leads to second theorem. So, that these are the part where you can find in the any linear algebra calculation or book with linear algebra computation. So, that provides those information very nicely. So, let A plus delta A y equals to B plus delta B and A x equals to B, where norm of delta A less than equals to epsilon norm of E and norm of delta B less than equals to epsilon into E, and assume that epsilon norm of A inverse norm of E less than 1, then it satisfied this inequality. These are hardcore matrix computing theorem which typically if one wants to have a very efficient algorithm for the linear system, he needs to keep checking all these details and then put the norm. Now, backward norm if you put, so it can tell you how much we can need to perturb the data so that we can still exact solution of the perturbed system. So, backward error of y is the smallest epsilon for which A plus delta A y equals to B plus delta B, and the norm of delta A less than equals to epsilon delta E, where delta B less than equals to epsilon E. So, y is given as the computed solution and E and small e to be the selected for the perturbation, and typical choice is that E is A and small e is B. Why that is not an unreasonable choice? Let us see. You define R equals to B minus A y, then we have eta E E y equals to norm of R by E y norm and epsilon norm. So, norm wise backward error is for case E equals to A and small e equals to B. So, that shows this expression. So, one can, so you can find out by considering some system and then estimate this kind of norms, or one can take some examples and put it some code in the MATLAB and find out that. Now, if you go by component wise, then some more definitions which would be handy to have. The absolute norm equals to the norm of that for all x which satisfied the p norm. Secondly, the norm is also monotone if mod x less than equals to mod y, which leads to the norm of x less than equals to norm of y. One can show that these properties are, there are some equivalency to that. So, you can show easily these things. Now, there are another theorem which is theorem number 5, which is analogous to theorem 2, which state that if you have Ax equals to b and a plus delta a y equals to b plus delta b, where delta a or the mod of delta a less than equals to epsilon e or mod of delta b less than equals to epsilon e, assume that epsilon a inverse this magnitude less than equals to 1, where dot is an absolute norm. Then the linearized definition would be x y norm, x minus y norm divided by x norm less than equals to this expression. So, one can also prove this. Now, in addition to that, finding that infinity norm, the implication is that if you take the limit of that whole theorem, you get back this condition system, and the condition number, reconditioned number depends on x and all these things, and the relative condition number would be defined at a inverse magnitude, a magnitude and the norm of that at the infinity level. So, this would be a very useful formula for condition number. And where you need to take care of all these while you will be programming your linear solver, and the final component wise backward error for y equivalent is the smallest epsilon, then a plus delta y, y equals to b plus delta b and the magnitude less than this. And the theorem says that if r is b minus a y, which is the residual, then w e y satisfied the maximum of this calculation. Now, you can have an example of the ill conditioned system, but we may skip that. Now, this is an estimation of the condition numbers. If you have A and B two n by n matrices and A is non-singular and B is singular. So, that means you have one singular matrix and one non-singular matrix, then one can prove 1 by condition number is less than equals to A minus B norm divided by A norm. So, B is singular for x not equals to 0 such that B x equals to 0. Now, the norm of x is A inverse A x, that norm which is essentially less than equals to norm of A inverse and norm of A x. So, one can rewrite norm of A inverse and norm of A minus B x. So, if I write down that inequality, it is A inverse norm of A inverse A minus B delta x. So, if you divide by both sides the norm of x into condition number, it gets you these results. So, that shows the proof for that thing. Again, you take an example, let us say A equals to 111.99 and B has 1110. So, this case it is singular and this is a non-singular system. Then I have to show, or one has to show that 1 by condition number is less than that, or rather condition number of A is greater than equals to 200. So, you can show that this is the minimum of this and find out those numbers. Now, it comes down to the stage where now you get the errors from the residual norms. Residual means when you are solving A equals to B, the residual vector would be B minus A x, and this information is quite handy while you will be dealing with different kind of iterative solvers, where you need to check the convergence level and this error becomes or slowly reducing, so that you get close to the exact solution. And how do you estimate that error from the residuals norm? Let us say x prime is an approximate solution. What we are trying to find out that A x equals to B, and x would be the exact solution. So, let us assume x prime is the approximate solution, and then that satisfied the equation or the solution to the system A x equals to b, then it should satisfy A x equals to b, and then we can compute the norm of the residual, which would be norm of b minus A x prime. Okay. So, how to estimate this? From this, one point is to use the inequality of the norm of x minus x divided by x less than the condition number of A and divide by the norm of R, norm of B. So, this plays a crucial role, and along with that the condition number, which also comes into the picture to find out that system. And as the proof follows, you see we have now the A x equals to b and the approximate solution satisfied A x by to b, then one can have A x minus x prime equals to b minus A x prime, which is R. So, the norm of x minus x prime is going to be the norm of A inverse R, which is, when you put that equality to inequality, it is norm of A inverse norm of R. So, from the relation of b equals to A x, you get back the norm of b equals to norm of A x, which is again less than norm of A and norm of x. So, what one can write, norm of x from here greater than equals to norm of b divided by norm of a. So, you just use this simple relationship of the norms for vector and the matrix. So, now I can write for norm of x minus x divided by x, which would be less than A inverse norm of A inverse and norm of R divided by norm of B by norm of A. So, which nothing but the condition number of R and B. So, one can show that it is greater than this factor. So, that takes you to the theorem number 6, which is, let A be a non-singular matrix and x prime an approximate solution to A x equals to b. Then for any norm x minus x prime, the norm of that less than equals to A inverse norm and the R norm. The R is the residual vector. Now, we have the relationship 1 by condition number A and magnitude or norm of R, norm of B less than equals to this. So, which K is the condition number and A is associated with the norm. Now, when you go to the iterative solution procedure, because finally you are solving A x equals to b and slowly approaching to the exact solution of A through iterative procedure. What you need to do, you can say that x prime, as we said, it could be the approximate solution to this particular system, then the residual vector would be R equals to b minus x prime, and we have seen that x minus x prime equals to A inverse R. So, we have x equals to x prime plus A inverse R. Now, what is the idea? The idea behind this process is that you compute R accurately, that means precision wise accuracy, then you solve for A delta equals to R. So, if R tends to 0, then delta should approaches towards the solution, and the correct x bar as x tilde plus delta. So, what happens if residual vector tends to 0, that means solution is going towards the convergence, then this delta would be also tending to 0, then the solution, the approximate solution will reach towards the exact solution, and this is what it is done in the iterative process. And when you do that, actually you have some terms which are associated with A inverse and all these calculations that is taken care of through all these, and while doing those things, the properties and the theorems that we have discussed, they become important. One has to look at lambda, one has to look at the condition number of A, one has to look at the spectral radius of A, all these parameters, residual vectors, norm, so becomes important. Now, what is that refinement algorithm? If one has to see through the pseudo algorithm, you compute first the residual vector b minus a x prime, then you solve for a delta equals to r. So, now if you see, your original system was a x equals to b and your r is b minus a x. So, theoretically when you get the exact solution, this should approach towards 0. Now, what you are solving here, the approximated solution a delta equals to r. Then you, once you get delta, you update your approximated solution by x tilde plus delta, while delta or the norm of delta will remain within this bound, which is greater than equals to epsilon and mod of x tilde. So, this is where, so why it works actually. So, you get some digit at most because of the conditioning, for example 3 digits at the first iteration, the error is roughly this. Second iteration, the error delta would be like that, but now residual or the norm of r is much smaller than norm of b. So, that is why slowly while you keep doing this process, you move towards the exact solution and you can reduce the computational overhead by not doing the direct approach. Now, once you do the refinement analysis, so what we have done, that residual is computed exactly. So, a plus, so the backward error if you want to estimate, a plus f k delta k equals to r k. So, at the second level of refinement, x k plus 1 would be x k a plus f k inverse r k. So, one can see that r k plus 1 is b minus a x k plus 1, and similarly if you write. So, the convergence is, this is the sufficient condition for the convergence that one has to achieve. These are the similar kind of proof that we have done. So, that now what is important here is that iterative refinement won't work when the residual r consists mostly of noise, that means delta equals to A inverse noise. However, when you heuristic is that epsilon is 10 to the power minus d and condition number of these, so the iterative refinement will gain by this much of digits. So, these are the things one can calculate, and these are the observation what one can obtain. Now, the linear system, the background is that you have a n by n system or with a b vector, vector b right hand side. So, you have to solve. So, this is a system, for example, you get 2x1, x1, x2 and you get Ax equals to b. So, A get you the coefficient matrix, and standard mathematical solution by Cramer's rule will get you like that. And the situations, the matrix is non-singular, you get a solution. If matrix A is singular, there are infinity many solutions. If matrix A is singular, there are no solutions. So, this is where you can see when you are trying to solve Ax equals to b system, and these are the properties one has to keep in mind. Now, we will move to the different methods of the solution technique of the linear system in the subsequent lecture. Thank you.